Good morning. This is Mark Johnson, and I'm joining you today with our encouraging word for the day. And again, it's a little late, and I apologize, but nevertheless, we're going to do an encouraging word, and hopefully this benefits you. We've been talking about post-resurrection responses and how the disciples went through a process and a period of time where their understanding grew. Jesus appeared to them, taught them, appeared to 500, appeared by the Sea of Galilee, in an upper room where the doors were closed. All kinds of things have been happening, and each of them has added a layer to their understanding. If we could only realize that we're not meant to understand everything in the moment, sometimes understanding comes gradually. And you work your way, and God reveals to you like the opening of a flower. It can't be forced. You do so, you will kill it. And we often get a little frustrated because we feel like we're maybe behind the eight ball. We didn't get the information when we wanted it, and it can even build into resentment. But the disciples didn't understand, and yet they trusted, and they learned, and they grew. Luke, who wrote the book of Luke, also wrote the book of Acts. And actually, it's a kind of a part 1 and part 2. And we're going to read from the first chapter of Acts in that ongoing study, that transitional period. Acts 1:1 says, "The former treatise have I made, O Theophilus, of all that Jesus began both to do and to teach." I don't have time to really delve into Theophilus and the ideas behind Luke and writing both books, and there really being one thought all the way through the books. But it's pretty clear by that brief statement that he is writing to what's likely a Greek scholar, or a wealthy Greek, or someone of influence and power. And he is trying to convince him, and could even be a relative, of who Jesus was, what Jesus did. And obviously Theophilus had heard something about it, or maybe they'd had conversations, and Luke wanted to fill in the blanks, really reveal to him who Jesus was. So Luke is writing in a manner that would appeal to Greeks. Theophilus is not a Jewish name. Very likely it's an important Greek. We don't really know who he is, but it's likely a very important Greek, that he spent all the time necessary to write both Luke and Acts to convince this man that Jesus was the mighty God, and that he was a God not just for the Jews, but also for the Gentiles. And the one salient thought that he carries through now the book of Acts is a revelation to the Gentiles, and how the Gentiles have that same experience that the Jews had, and that it is the plan of God, the purpose of God as it rolls out. So this is a very important writing. In modern times, people have looked at the book of Acts and said, well, there's no theology in the book of Acts. It's not even, some would say, not even historical. It was written, they used to say, it was written in 150, 175, well after all the events of the apostles. New scholarship has reversed that idea. And for the most part, I think modern scholars, the most modern scholars, are taking another look at the book of Luke and believing that it happened very near the time when the apostles were alive. Conservative theologians have always believed that the book of Luke was exactly what it purported to be. A story from Luke, a physician, writing to a friend or an acquaintance, trying to convince him in his Greek mind of the godness of Jesus Christ. And so it's written that way, and you see the revelation that God intended, and it's not just Luke's theology, it's God's theology. For Jesus appears to them, and we'll read that in the next few days, to go into Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the uttermost parts of the earth. Well, that's not Luke's plan. Luke's a reporter of God's plan. And so he's writing it out, and this God's plan would appeal to Theophilus. Many would feel like, well, the Jews have their own religion and this is just another Jewish sect. You can see that in some of the writings from the emperors as they try to find out who Christos is and what Christians are, and their discussions and their emails or their mail, and they didn't have email, their mail back and forth in their writings are trying to understand. And the historians like Josephus is writing about the controversy that was brought up by the Christians, and they called it a Jewish sect. Of course, Josephus was a Jewish historian working for the Romans, so he had an interesting perspective, and he categorized it as a Jewish sect, which in its beginnings it certainly was. It was a subcategory of the Jewish faith, but it was never intended to be that alone. It was intended to be a faith for all ages, a faith for all peoples. And Jesus lays that out here in the book of Acts, and Luke simply reports what Jesus says, whether he heard it or heard from the disciples who heard it. I believe he was very near the beginning, and in this first wave, he didn't actually write from first person until about the middle of the book of Acts. So some of this he didn't write from life experience. I was not there when Jesus said that to the apostles, but I was saved and was involved later on, especially when Paul began his missionary journeys. Luke was a core partner to Paul as he traveled. So it's very important for us to understand that Luke's writing this, and he has a purpose or a focus for writing it, but it's not his story. He's just the recorder of it. Now, if you look at history can be written from a bunch of different perspectives. That is true. And people see it from the winning side and people see it from the losing side. And the winning side doesn't record often their atrocities, and the losing side emphasizes the atrocities of the winning side without recording their own atrocities. So there's always perspective that happens, and sometimes distance helps perspective in certain ways. But if you're getting an eyewitness account, someone who actually was on the trail with Paul, then it's much better to get it from the guy who's writing notes at night after the events happen, or at the end of the month or the end of the week, or whenever Luke sat down and began to write out what he saw and what he was a part of. It would not be unnatural for Luke, a physician, to take notes. Physicians are often very scientific in their mindset, and they want to record what happened so they can look back and analyze it. And they can understand, did this medicine work? Did this one work better than that one? And they take notes about what they're doing. And you go to the doctor's office, and the nurse is sitting there taking notes about your experiences, what you've got going on in your life. And then those notes become part of your permanent record. You go back 5 years later, and the doctor can pull out your notes and say, well, you had this and this happen. You still have these issues. What happened with that? And they can get an understanding of who you are as an individual. So Luke is writing so everyone will understand Jesus and understand it from most likely a Greek mindset. He's writing to a Greek, and he uses Greek, and he is appealing to a global mentality. When I say Greek, I don't mean people from the Greek Isles, because the vast majority of the world spoke Greek. At least the Middle Eastern world and the European world would speak Greek at this point. And so that's the people that he's reaching for. So it would not be a single culture, but it would be a language that crossed into lots and lots of cultures. And he's trying to appeal to the largest segment. And the Greek philosophy, the Greek way of thought, was a very common way of thinking during this time frame. So he is not appealing to just a small segment, but actually this was written to the world. Everybody should know and everybody should understand who Jesus is and what happened in the book of Acts and how the church was born and how they received power and how they had miracles happen and saw signs and wonders and how God answered them and met their needs and opened doors for them and led them out of bondage and all the miraculous things that happened in the book of Acts shows that God is a present help in time of trouble. I was going to do some more out of Acts chapter 1, but I kind of dwelled in the subject of Theophilus. So we'll continue to deal with this, continue to walk through. I think it's very interesting. I pray that you're blessed by this and anointed, and the Lord speaks to you. So thanks for joining us today. Remember, the Borlick's wedding is tomorrow night. The Kilgore-Borlick wedding is tomorrow night. They're in the auditorium, which is why I'm in my office. And they're setting up, getting ready for the wedding. And there's a lot of excitement in the air about that. Keep our elders in prayer. We've invited them to come on Saturday. We record our services at noon on Saturday. And we've invited some of our elders to come in and join us as we record the service live and spend a little time with us worshiping on Saturday for Sunday service. And I'm really looking forward to Saturday. And I pray that you're looking forward to Sunday. And God's blessings in your home and in your life. Thank you for joining me this morning. God bless you.